Okay, picture this scenario. You're driving down the highway at a cool 110 kilometers per hour. Out of nowhere, the traffic light dead ahead turns red. You slam on the brakes. Are you gonna stop in time, or are you gonna crash right into the middle of that intersection? Well, the answer to that? It's not just about having quick reflexes. It all comes down to the fundamental laws of motion.
By the end of this explainer, you're going to absolutely master the 4 core kinematic equations. You'll understand the math behind them, learn a foolproof step-by-step strategy to actually use them, and know exactly how to predict the future position and speed of literally any moving object. So let's just dive right into it.
Now, before we get lost in the math, we've got to speak the language of physics, right? Notation is what simplifies motion. When you look at these upcoming formulas, you're going to see variables with a little subscript, 0. Things like x0 or v0. Think of that little 0 as the exact millisecond you press the start button on your stopwatch. It stands for our initial values, like where you started or your initial velocity. And any variable without a subscript, well, that just represents your final value the moment you hit stop.
All right, here is your kinematic toolbox for constant acceleration. Take a look at these 4 equations. Just like a real mechanic's toolbox, you wouldn't use a hammer to turn a screw, right? You pick the specific tool designed for the exact job you have. Each equation here relates displacement, velocity, acceleration, and time in its own unique way. Your goal isn't just to blindly memorize these like a textbook. It's to know exactly which tool to pull out based on the info you already have in front of you.
So, how do we actually choose the right tool? We use this foolproof 4-step problem-solving strategy. Step 1, draw a sketch. Always visualize the physics first. Step 2, identify your known and unknown values. Literally write them out on a piece of paper. Step 3, look at your toolbox and choose the appropriate equation that bridges the gap between your knowns and your unknowns. And step 4, just plug in those values and solve. I promise you, if you follow this method step by step, you are never going to get lost in the math.
Let's make this a whole lot easier with a real example so you can see this toolbox in action. Imagine an airplane lands with an initial velocity of 70.0 meters per second. It decelerates at 1.50 meters per second squared for 40 seconds. What's its final velocity? Okay, following our steps, our knowns are initial velocity, which is 70, time, which is 40, and our deceleration. Now keep in mind, deceleration just means the acceleration vector is pointing in the opposite direction of the velocity, so our acceleration is actually a negative 1.50. Since we need the final velocity, we reach right into our toolbox and grab that very first tool, v equals v0 plus at. We plug in 70 plus negative 1.50 times 40, and boom, we get a final velocity of 10.0 meters per second. This brilliantly illustrates how the math perfectly reflects reality. The plane slowed down significantly, but hey, since the number is still positive, we know for sure it's still moving forward down the runway toward the terminal.
But now you might be asking yourself, wait, what do we do if a problem doesn't tell us how much time has passed? What if our stopwatch is just completely missing? Pay close attention here, because this is exactly where a lot of students hit a brick wall.
Let's look at this scenario. A dragster accelerates from rest, which means our initial velocity is 0, at a massive 26.0 meters per second squared over a distance of 402 meters. We want to know its final velocity, but we had absolutely no time variable given. No problem. We go back to the toolbox. We're going to select the 4th equation, v squared equals v0 squared plus 2a times the change in x. We use this one specifically because it doesn't require time at all. Plugging in our numbers and taking the square root gives us a final velocity of about 145 meters per second. All right, now let's connect this right back to real life and that super dangerous intersection from our opening question. You're going 30 meters per second, which is about 110 kilometers per hour. You hit the brakes, and you're going to see a stark difference in the numbers. Using that exact same 4th equation, we can see that on dry concrete, your car decelerates at negative 7 meters per second squared, taking 64.3 meters to come to a complete stop. But on wet concrete, your deceleration drops to negative 5, and suddenly it takes 90.0 meters to stop. But wait a second, we're missing something absolutely crucial here. What about reaction time? I mean, are you a robot that hits the brake pedal the exact millisecond the light turns red? Obviously not. There's a physiological delay, usually about half a second, before your foot even manages to touch the pedal. And here is a hugely common student mistake. People completely forget that during that half second it takes for your brain to react, your car is still traveling at a constant velocity of 30 meters per second. Deceleration hasn't even started yet. Using our basic displacement formula for constant velocity, 30 meters per second times 0.5 seconds equals 15 meters. That is a hidden 15 meters added to your journey while your brain is just processing that the light is red. And this brings us to the visual truth of our opening problem. When we calculate the total stopping distance, now including your reaction time, the results are honestly eye-opening. On dry concrete, you need almost 80 meters to stop. On wet concrete, 105 meters. If that intersection was 90 meters away, a wet road means you are absolutely crashing. This right here perfectly illustrates why understanding these equations actually matters in the real world.
Let's move on to one more practical scenario that's just a bit more advanced. A car merges onto a 200-meter freeway ramp at an initial velocity of 10.0 meters per second, accelerating at 2.00 meters per second squared. How long does it take to travel the entire ramp? Well, here, we need to solve for time, so we pull out our third tool. X equals x0 plus v0t plus 1/2 at squared. But I want you to notice what happens to the math when we plug our knowns in.
We generate a quadratic equation. And here is a golden rule to remember. Whenever an equation contains an unknown squared, there will always be two solutions, but only one is actually reasonable. If we solve the quadratic formula for this merging car, we get 2 times a positive 10 seconds and a negative 20 seconds. Obviously, a negative time would mean the event happened 20 seconds before we even started the stopwatch, right? So we completely reject it. The only realistic physical answer here is 10 seconds. Okay, before we wrap up, let's summarize the absolutely key points you need to take away from this explainer. First, that little subscript 0 means starting the stopwatch. Second, you have 4 kinematic equations. You need to use them exactly like a targeted mechanics toolbox. Third, always identify your knowns and unknowns first so you don't get lost in the algebra. And finally, in the real world, remember that reaction time always happens at a constant velocity before any deceleration even begins. So the crucial point is that you now have the exact tools to predict motion, but only if the acceleration remains constant. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question. Our entire toolkit requires constant acceleration, but what happens to our math when a moving object, like say a rocket taking off or a sports car shifting gears, drastically changes its acceleration multiple times during a single trip? Think about that for a bit, and we'll explore the mathematics of complex, multi-part motion in our next explainer.